Some analysis on this now with Andrew Peake, a former senior director for European and Russian affairs at the National Security Council and is currently a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council think tank. He joins me now from Washington. Andrew, thanks for joining us on this news hour. So Joe Biden says no to sending F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, but do you think that could possibly change in the future as this conflict heats up?
I do. You know, the Biden administration has tried to draw a fine line between weapons that could allow Ukraine to extend the war into Russia and weapons that will just allow Ukraine to defend itself within its borders. I suspect at some point the Russians have delivered a message that it views anything like long-range missiles that would allow Ukraine to strike in Russia to be escalatory and a red line. And the Biden administration has tried to tiptoe up to but not cross that red line.
And Andrew, this conflict has been going on for almost a year. At the end of February, it will be 1 year. Zelensky from Ukraine has consistently asked his allies for more support, more money, more weapons. The West is now heavily invested in the war, but how much more can they give? The ultimate aim, many would say, would surely be for this war to end, to come to a diplomatic solution to end it.
I agree. I think the goal, the big question about end states and goals is going to be when Ukraine looks to be in a position with its new weaponry to take back Crimea and the Russian naval base there, which would be, of all the vital interests Russia has in Ukraine, that would clearly be the most important to it. That is where in 2014 the war started. And so I suspect the West will back Ukraine as while it is retaking its territory in the east and south. And then whenever it comes, in 6 months and 10 months, there will be this crisis point of when it reaches Crimea and Russia says enough, and then it has to decide whether or not to settle. That'll really be the moment of decision.
And Russia, for months now, has said it's not fighting Ukraine, but it's really fighting the U.S. because of Washington's heavy involvement in this conflict. By supplying Kiev with weapons and support, does the U.S. play into that narrative from Moscow? Or is Vladimir Putin using Washington's support of Ukraine as a reason to continue the conflict, along with the many other reasons that he's given?
No, I don't think the West has any responsibility for this. Russia started this war. Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2014 when Ukraine had very few U.S. weapons. That is when this conflict originally began. I think, unfortunately, that narrative and some loose messaging on the Western side about regime change, about in Russia, I think some loose messaging has contributed to much of the world feeling more sympathetic towards Russian messaging, which could be tightened up on our side, the U.S. side, but we do not bear responsibility for the continuance of this war. The Russians do.
Andrew Peake, appreciate your analysis on this ongoing conflict. Live to us there from the U.S. Capitol. Thanks, Andrew.